Hello YouTube and welcome back to a new video with Rams fan YT. Hope you had a wonderful Christmas just been and a happy New Year's Eve. Tomorrow obviously is New Year in 2024, so I've decided it'd be a great opportunity today to look through all the games that I have been to in 2023. The mass majority of the time I've been living in the northeast in Newcastle. And over the summer, as some of you fans out there would know, I moved to Nottingham as my home, but still go to Newcastle University. So most of the teams I am looking at will be in either Nottinghamshire or the North East. And unfortunately, no Derby County games so far, although I am planning on going to the EFL Trophy fixture against Bradford City in a few days' time. But the first one I went to of 2023 was a fixture of Hebburn Town versus Grimsby Borough, with the home side losing 4-0. The young fans of Hebburn were incredibly lively for the first 10 minutes. We did arrive a few minutes late, but they left to play football on a side pitch for the rest of the game, and the atmosphere very quickly died out. Heburn's kit is very nice, though. I really like it. It's sort of got a Dortmund-esque sort of vibe, which was definitely the best thing about the players on the pitch for Hebburn that day, because they were woeful. It is a lovely, decent stadium with a clubhouse in the far corner, but one of the stands was closed off as well due to the neighbours' concerns. And there was also a decent view of a church behind the entrance as well. Very nice ground altogether. One of the upper ends, probably the ones in Tier 8. Grimsby never really travelled, so every goal really saw a boo or an applause out of respect. The total attendance on that day was 287, which is a decent amount for the level of football they're at. The next game I went to was Whitley Bay beating Newcastle Benfield 2-0. This game actually saw Whitley Bay go top of the league. Unfortunately, they fell off a bit after this result and couldn't maintain their automatic promotion form and lost out in the playoffs. But the atmosphere on that day felt like the team was expected to get promoted. Whitley Bay was so dominant for about 70% of the game, with the rest being a bit of a scrappy one in the centre of the park. Benfield, for me, never stood a chance. But a few of their fans did make the short journey over, to be fair. And there was a decent standing ovation at the end. The food and drink provided was a decent standard as well. And the far stand from the entrance looks very historic, almost like a miniature version of that famous clock stand at Hillsborough. It is a wonderful ground, probably the best one in the Northern Football League, I would have to say, in Tier 9 that is. And very respectful attendance for that day as well of 314 fans. I reckon probably about 30-ish of them would have been Newcastle fans. So Whitley Bay is a well-supported club for me. And then we go to Nottinghamshire. I saw Newark and Sherwood United beating Hucknall Town 3-2 in the FA Cup extra preliminary round. It was expected to be quite a heavy victory for Newark. However, both teams' defences were very poor, hence the 5 goals. Newark clinched the tie after being behind 2-0 with a fine string of play for about 30 minutes. Where I was sitting, I was with one of the players' relatives, and he was giving plenty of stick to his own player and team. That was for Hucknall. And Hucknall already seemed to have the attitude that promotion came too early by talking to some of the fans, and that they would be the league's whipping boys. I did manage to sample some local beer as well at the club, which is always a good result when you get to a team. The actual stadium was quite poor, though, really badly poor, I would say. It only had one stand, and considering it was the summer holidays, it had quite a mediocre attendance. And that attendance was 228 for an FA Cup tie during the summer holidays. I would expect it to be more pushing was 270. But, it was midweek as well, so that could have played slightly into the concerns. Then I saw Shepshed Dynamo losing 2-3 to Spalding United, who Spalding this season have been incredible. I'm so glad I've got to see them actually in the flesh. But this was in the FA Cup preliminary round. And again, another exciting game at a high-end energy with both teams up for it. and tried to make sure desperately that it didn't go into extra time. The fans on both sides were very credible with making the trip on a Tuesday night for all the way from Spalding, which is pretty much the middle of nowhere, to Shepshed, equally in the middle of nowhere. And that team in blue and yellow had quite some vocal and vicious fans. There was plenty of chanting throughout the match, with both sides having a bit of a ding-dong-do. You had sort of a call and response sort of thing going on. And some balloons were even brought into the stadium, which you'd love to see, don't you? I mean, Butthole Lane, with the most funniest name of the stadium, if you're 3 years old and immature like me, is actually it's a stunningly beautiful stadium. And they're clearly a well-supported club. A last-minute winning by Spalding sent the away supporters really into pandemonium. And the attendance of 272 felt like way more than that because of just how vocal the fans were. And then the final one I saw in Nottinghamshire was Gedling Miners Welfare winning 3-0 over Sandy Acre Town. Now, Sandy Acre are very poor. It was a very one-sided affair in Tier 10, with Gedling never looking like they were going to concede a goal. San Diego was so poor, they had no energy, and the team looked disjointed. Helped by not a single away fan, I could tell, to help them up their performances, despite the actual game only having about a 20-minute jaunt. But Gedling had a worryingly elderly support base as well, with most of the fans being former miners with the club. And so I struggle really to see the long-term future unless they undergo some form of rebranding for both of the clubs. The stadium itself felt much like a welfare stadium does, with it on both sides having sheltered standing, but very little seats apart from a row on the opposite side from the entrance. There was a tea house in a storage container that was like outside the stadium complex a bit, but the food and drink was average, to be honest. For once, I didn't have alcohol there because they did have some bar drinks as well, which are my favourite soft drinks. But the attendance was only 75. Really not. It's about average for a Tier 10. It is one of them things that people don't go to Tier 10 games. Then the first one back up in Newcastle, I took the non-league society as of Newcastle University, to see West Allotment Celtic with a dominant 10-1 thrashing over AFC Blackpool in the FA Vars. And that was the most one-sided affair of football I think I've ever witnessed. So both teams wouldn't normally play each other. AFC Blackpool are in the Northwest Counties Division 1 North, and the other one in the Northern Football League Division 1. So A, not the same tier, and B, there was a league between them. But I think this is a quite poor reflection of Northwestern football compared to Northeast. But it does appear that some of the clubs in the Northwest seem to be very poor and some seem to be very good. Just looking at like some of the results which come out of that league. Like you have big names which are in there: Northwich, Victoria, formerly Macclesfield, Bury. I don't know if they're still in there or whether they got promoted. So they do have some big teams in that sort of area, but then they also have some very poor ones as well. Anyway, the match opened with Blackpool scoring early, and they seemed to try and sit and defend a 1-0. But that led to 3-1 by half time, and with no hope of a comeback, they decided to let every shot it seemed go in. And by the time the 7th goal had gone in, I decided to bring a bit of life to a very dead stadium by giving a bit of abuse to the Blackpool's keeper. I don't think he overly likes me after that, but if you're conceding 10 goals, I think you do deserve a little bit of stick, although a lot of it was also down to the back line as well, being incredibly poor. The attendance was 91, so FA Vars game, maybe not as many as you would expect, but I still think quite a poor showing, and a lot of the fans were all going to be dead. Considering percentage-wise, I would say a solid third of the stadium were people coming from my society. So it was just overall one of them days that could have been better, if we were brutally honest. I did like the clubhouse of West Allotment, though. Then I went to Blythe Spartans with their 1-1 draw with Worksop Town. And despite them being a league apart with Blythe Spartans in National League North and Worksop Town in the Northern Premier League, you really couldn't tell which way round that actually was on the day. Worksop played so well with a pace and skill and such a dominant performance. And despite a dubious offside goal for Blythe, scored in a final surge as well in the last 15 minutes, so they could have drawn it level. But unsurprisingly, it was lost on the second leg 5-0. Worksop were a great credit, playing above their league and carrying about 100 fans. It was generally impressive to see the away sport. It's no surprise to me that they went on a cheeky FA Cup run this season, and the stadium of Blythe is so lovely and rustic. I stood under what was like a former barn in life, as well as some other nice stands being around the ground as well. That stadium is definitely a National League standard one if they installed some more seats, and it's a lovely one. The food was great there as well. Getting a pie is always a win. It seems to have all sorts of pastry products, and the attendance was 738, which is a decent showing for an FA Cup game with not a lot riding on it, to be honest. So credit to the Blythe fans. Then I went to Sunderland West End against Newcastle Blue Star, with Newcastle Blue Star winning 5-1 on the end of the day. The non-league Tyne-Wear derby, as I dubbed it, ended up being a totally dominant performance for the Tynesiders. The pitch was that awful artificial stuff, which makes the playing look absolutely woeful. Like, them little black bits that you got inside of like kids' playgrounds. It's generally awful playing surface. And the two stands were, which, despite being very modern, were way too far away from the pitch, and you could only watch from two sides. I didn't even bother going into the stands in the end. And I wasn't best pleased seeing all these modern developments on basically a 3G pitch, but no card machine at the turnstiles. However, Newcastle showed their class on the day, buoyed on by a healthy away following of around 30 to 40 fans. One of the Newcastle Blue Star players was a bit lippy to my friend from Sunderland, calling him a fucking Mackham. But the player had the last laugh as my friend stood there shivering on the exposed Sunderland pitch, seeing his side concede a fifth goal, and that player went and celebrated right in his face. The attendance was 150, very decent for a tier 10 occasion after all. But they are both some of the most well-supported clubs in the Northeast at that level. South Shields winning 1-0 against Buxton. As I sided with my Derbyshire roots for this tie, I was hoping for a bit of a better display, but this was the start of a bit of a mediocre run of form which they are currently experiencing at Buxton. The game was a very much dead rubber, with South Shields winning all the first balls, but couldn't break down a very resilient Bucks defence. Eventually, they did find a way through, leaving it a little too late for Buxton to gain the draw they were clearly set out for fighting for. Understandably, the 30-odd away supporters for a Tuesday night, which, considering how far Buxton is from South Shields, is absolute credit, but they were furious, saying it was one of the worst football displays they'd seen in some time, and probably true as well, considering how well Buxton have been playing of late. But as usual, no complaints with South Shields, who always seem to make the stadium seem full, and you get a good pint glass with their alcohol as well. For me, one of the best teams in non-league. They had an attendance of 1,868. Probably if we exclude the National League, they're definitely up there. Like, to manage to get that much of attendance, this League 2 stadium, definitely. Hope they find a new owner, and hopefully the owner does manage to get the necessary support he needs during his cancer treatment. Obviously, absolutely devastating for the whole community. And hopefully South Shields improve on the pitch as well and go back into that playoff surge they had at the beginning of the season. So I decided for round 2 for the Derbyshire outfits, with Morpeth Town, though, winning this time 2-1 against Ilkeston Town. Just my bad luck continuing, I suppose. And there wasn't much in the tie, but the very visceral away fans sang throughout all 90 minutes, something which I can only say about Worksop in terms of fans. Morpeth had some kids who thought it wise to start the chant off, but soon shut up when they got schooled by telling them, "You've got school on a Monday, school on a Monday," as it was starting to wave across the away supporters. A credit has to go to them for making the 8-hour round trip and being so accommodating of me as well. At the end of the match, I got high fives and handshakes by all the players and away fans, meaning I will almost certainly have to watch them at home at some point coming up. The result was tightly contested, and it always makes me smile seeing the players of both sides having a beer and a pizza in the clubhouse after the match had long finished and we were waiting for the shuttle bus back. The attendance was 537, which is a moderately good attendance for a Tier 7 affair. It's about average. But the stadium itself, it was very muddy to get there because we didn't realise the shuttle bus to get there, where that was. We had to walk the 30 minutes through fields to get there. And then the last one I went to was a big ad hoc, I suppose, with Sunderland West End drawing 2-2 with Prudhoe Youth Club. I think it is. I never intended to come back to this woeful stadium again. The original game I intended to go to of Ashington versus Belper Town was called off due to a waterlogged pitch, and the second choice game in North Shields v Sunderland RCA likewise. So I had to settle for one game in the North East that wasn't called off. So a trek back to Sunderland occurred. This game was generally the most dull draw with 2 goals apiece, with neither side looking like winning it, and a draw was probably a fair result. Albeit I think Prudhoe was slightly better on the day, but a lack of quality showed for both sides, especially what appeared to be a 60-year-old in the net for Sunderland, who I've later found out was a player coach. And the attendance of 70 was a quite poor showing, to be honest. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it's a bit of a shorter one than usual. Please subscribe if you're new around here. I'm not sure what's going to be coming up in the new year. I'll try planning something. But I will see you later regardless. Bye for now.